Alex Murdaugh is getting a new trial. Hey everyone, I'm Emerson, and this is Criminally Obsessed. The South Carolina State Supreme Court's decision was unanimous. The justices placed the blame squarely on the former clerk of court, Becky Hill. They call her actions and lies shocking, egregious, disgraceful, and unprecedented.
There is no excuse for my mistakes. I am ashamed of them.
They say what Becky Hill said to several jurors unquestionably was intended to push them to a guilty verdict. So the actions of one woman who was supposed to uphold the law and ensure Alex Murdaugh got a fair trial is responsible for this. Unbelievable.
Becky Hill is the villain here, which I think is appropriate.
I had to talk about this with our former South Carolina Attorney General, Charlie Condon. He sat with me every day back in 2023 during this trial as our legal analyst. Let's get into it. I am so pleased that you could join me. I mean, we spent 6 weeks together at Alex Murdaugh's trial. Are you surprised that we're getting this again?
And it's all been undone by Becky Hill, right? All 6 weeks down the drain. I'm not, the Supreme Court telegraphed this opinion at oral argument. I am surprised, though, that it's unanimous, all five. But no, they all have gotten together in what's called a per curiam opinion, meaning not one justice wrote it, but all five take ownership. And they have ordered a new trial for defendant Alex Murdaugh and everyone running for AG and the AG himself. My understanding, they're all saying that they're going to re-prosecute this case. I can't see a plea bargain. I can't see the defendant wanting to plea bargain. I think we're gonna have a new trial, and I would think it'd start off in Colleton, a repeat. Here we go.
Here we go.
They could move for a change of venue, but what's going to change with the other 45 counties? Everyone would have heard about this case. And I did get the sense that Alex Murdaugh, he really liked, and his family, I think they liked being nearby there, which would be nearby to their different homes. They live either in Hampton or the Beaufort area or in the Dorchester County. I felt like Colleton was a good spot for them. So my expectation would be that they'd start off in Colleton. In my wildest dreams, I really did not think we'd have an actual repeat of this trial because of the length of it and also because of the strong evidence against the defendant. But yes, Becky Hill single-handedly, per the Supreme Court, has engineered a new trial for this defendant.
I thought that one of the first lines in it, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me right now, but it was that she put her finger on the scales of justice. When
you saw that first line there, you knew it was coming.
This all falls on the shoulders of one woman who had plans to write a book and decided to, tamper with a jury that in possibly the biggest case we've ever had in South Carolina.
Yeah, and we got to know Becky over the 6 weeks. I still think, even though it's getting harder and harder to keep saying this, I think basically she is a good person. I think she got caught up in the moment, but the conduct that they do highlight and of course, her perjury at the hearing before Justice Toll, it does wear on you a bit, doesn't it? And now it has this tremendous cost to really everyone involved. That they have to retry this case. That said, I do think the retrial will be probably not as long because the court made it very clear they didn't want to hear all that financial crime information. To shorten that up, it was a very clear message in the opinion. So I don't think it's going to be as long as 6 weeks, but it's still going to be a long, long trial. Now, whether it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, it's going to be something. And of course, the evidence that has to be produced and the technical information that SLED agents, the people from all the different walks of life, from their different experts that were involved, it's a lot, isn't it?
The witness list alone was inordinate. And the amount of money involved in retrying this case, Charlie, is is pretty bad.
Yeah, it'll be hundreds of thousands of dollars that'll fall upon the local government to retry it. And of course, the state government will bear the expense of the state side. And on the defense side, now they do have the notoriety that comes with defending this and I guess the free publicity. But I think from the economic standpoint, I would think this defendant would have little to no resources going forward. But I expect the defense lawyers will stick with him. But again, I'm thinking that from their standpoint is that we've gone this far, we've gotten a good result here with a new trial. Let's see if we can finish it with a not guilty verdict, which, well, I thought about that too. You know, typically, in my view, a retrial benefits the state. I've had a number of retrials when I was the prosecutor here in the Charleston area, and I always felt like it benefited the state because you knew what the defense was doing. I think in this case, though, it might be just the exact opposite because there was so much technical information that came in that I think towards the end of that trial that they admitted really without much objection. I think they're going to rethink that. And also the defendant testifying, I think that was a mistake looking in hindsight. Now, even if they can talk him into not testifying, I do think that...
Oh, it's a huge mistake. Oh, my God. He was so gross. It was horrible, wasn't it? It was hard to watch.
Yeah, it was at points. But, you know, he had there's testimony under oath subject to cross-examination, so I think they could read that testimony potentially at a retrial. So there's still this strong evidence against him, but I think the defense is going to have a one-up on this. And also, in thinking about the jurors that might be there, now the standard isn't, have you heard about this case? Because everyone's heard about it. But the standard would be, have you made up your mind? And you know, after looking at all the evidence here, if you haven't made up your mind about this one, and if you're honest, I would think that would be a lot, if not most, of the potential jurors. So who's left? It'd be people that haven't made up their mind based upon the evidence that's out there in public, knowing that there's already been a guilty verdict of murder. I would think that those people might potentially be defense type jurors. So it may be hard for the state to get another conviction. We shall see.
So after the oral arguments, you know, we talked about this. It did not look good. It did not look good. I felt like they took the state to task. And just to be clear, I did not feel like, especially the way they just talked about it in the opinion that they gave, they were not going after, you know, the way the state handled the case at all. They weren't going after, you know, Clifton Newman, the judge who presided over Alex Murdaugh's murder trial. They were going after Becky, but they went to task with the state saying, you can't defend this. There's no way you can tell us he got a fair trial. It's a stunning, really, prosecution indictment of Becky Hill. But when you step back from it, I think your observation is correct that they're in effect saying, why are you defending this state so hard because it's so egregious? I do think they gloss over, and there's a footnote at the end where they commend Justice Toll for presiding over the evidentiary hearing in a murky area of law. And so I do think you can make valid, effective arguments before today that the standard that we had in South Carolina wasn't met in this particular case. That's gone now. The Supreme Court has made it very clear that this Rimmer versus the United States is a standard, that if you've got this kind of contact with the juror, that there's a presumption of prejudice demanding a new trial unless the state can rebut it. And the state is now hamstrung. The court also made it very clear that under our court rules, you can't get into what the jurors are saying during deliberations. You can't have any testimony that we did have during the evidentiary hearing. So the state has to rebut it through other means. And so I think just in the future, if there's any sort of conduct like this that's anywhere close to what Becky Hill did, the defense is going to get a new trial. But at least now the rules are clear. But again, I do think it's, I don't know if sad's the right word. I think it's a bit outrageous that we have to have a new trial here, given the expense, the amount of evidence against this defendant, and just the hardship that it, you know, you were there in Colleton. I mean, the folks went out of their way to be polite and to provide things, but it was a tremendous expense to the local community, the food trucks coming in, the temporary bathrooms. We're going to have to go through that again, apparently. It was supposed to be a unicorn, if I remember correctly. This was supposed to be a unicorn case, once in a lifetime. We weren't going to see anything like this ever again.
Well,
and here we are.
Here we are. Probably next year we'll see it again.
Well, when do you think? Next year?
Mm-hmm. I think that'd be about right. You know, you'll have a new attorney general in office, sworn in January. I would think he's going to be champing at the bit to re-prosecute this case. And so I think they'll get together and set a court date, I would think sometime in 2027. I would think on the defense side, I think they're probably ecstatic that this has happened. I would think the defendant himself is going to be happy to be back out of his prison cell and in a courtroom. And, you know, we've talked about this before. I always did feel like he does not want to be labeled a murderer of his wife and son. That's his driving force. He pled to everything else, even though he's going to be locked up for, I think the federal prison sentence is 40 years and the state prison sentence is 27 years, both of them to run concurrently. But it would still result in him dying in prison. Regardless of that, he will not plead to murder. He doesn't want to be labeled a murderer of his wife and son. And the state now has made the decision. It's very apparent the state's made the decision to go forward. So we're going to have a retrial. Well,
Charlie, what do you think Alex Murdaugh is saying right now?
Oh, I think he's saying that he's been vindicated. Didn't get a fair trial. He's innocent. He really has not been vindicated. What's happened here is because of the actions of Becky Hill, the Supreme Court has decided to give him a new trial, but he's not been vindicated. He is presumed to be innocent under our standards here in America, which I think is good, but he'll get his day in court again, and the same evidence that they had before, it will not go away. That evidence is there. We can talk about that, the video at the kennel, all those sorts of things.
I mean, that was the smoking gun, right? The kennel video.
Oh gosh, wasn't it very? He lied and said he wasn't there. Then he said, well, I was there once he heard about the video. That was very much very strong evidence against him. But again, having said all that, as I said earlier, I do think that the defense is going to rethink financial crimes. The Supreme Court also made very clear in its opinion, it's given a roadmap to the state saying, if you put all that stuff in again, we're going to reverse it. Here's how you can do this. And it's going to be really toned down. So I think instead of weeks and weeks of financial crimes, we're going to have maybe a day or two of it at most. So I do think that the trial will be shortened quite a bit. I was thinking about this as well. Remember,
Charlie, to the financial crimes, I mean, for our viewers to understand as well, I mean, these financial crimes was considered a trial within a trial, right? So we had 2 weeks worth of financial crimes, which he admitted to later on. I mean, he's in prison forever based on, what he did with vulnerable clients, right? So just to set the table, like these financial crimes were introduced because he was admitting to being a liar and a thief and insurance fraud and all this, but they're saying they spent too much time talking financial crimes.
Yes, the court ruled that and it's unusual because they gave in effect some advice on something that really wasn't before them, since they were reversing it based upon Becky Hill's conduct, but they were in the opinion saying, we all agree that you can let the financial crimes in. Now, some of us had different opinions about that, but we're agreeing you can let it in. Different opinions about the extent of it, you can let it in. But all of us agree that during the trial that the state went too far in some of the details. And it gave a very specific example. It was the one where I believe it was Creighton Walters making it very clear that the personal representative was appointed for, I think it was Tony, because he was mentally disabled. And the court said that has nothing to do with the purpose or the allowability of the evidence here. That was obviously prejudicial to the defendant. So this is an example of you're just going too far. So I think the state's going to take that. I certainly would look at that and say, all right, we need to be very tight on our presentation on financial crimes. Let's not let it go forever. Let's keep it tight. Let's keep it relatively brief. It'll still take several days, probably a couple of days of testimony outside the jury, and then a couple of days with the jurors there. But you were there along with yours truly at 2 weeks or so, I felt like, for the financial crimes.
2 weeks. Now, in the opinion, I want to talk about the opinion for a minute, because in the opinion it says Hill's egregious, improper jury interference went to the heart of the case and unquestionably was intended to push the jury to a guilty verdict.
I know. Wow. Very strong language. Very strong language against her, isn't it? And there were just paragraph, line after line about how bad Becky Hill behaved, and they did hang their hat on that. And I did think, in looking at it, since it's a per curiam opinion, I think given the notoriety of the case, that the court felt like it was important for our legal system here in South Carolina for them to speak with one voice,
right,
and to say very clearly why they're doing it. And so the bottom line on the opinion, we're doing this because of the improper, egregious conduct of one person, Becky Hill. And they basically, if you read the whole opinion, they really do praise everyone else. They praise the trial judge. They praise former Chief Justice Toll. They praise the defense lawyer.
It's not your fault. It's Becky's fault. It's Becky's fault.
Becky.
I was saying it also says a limited number of jurors who acknowledged hearing Hill's improper comments did not reduce their prejudicial effect, right? That it was heard at most by 3 jurors.
I know. That's the other thing that struck me about it. I would have thought that maybe one justice would say, hey, most of the jurors, the vast majority, say there was no improper conduct. It was just to a couple of them. And the weight of the evidence was just so strong that I would vote to uphold the verdict. But no, all 5. And so I would say that I think the one positive aspect about this development is that in future cases, there's not a murky area of law here now. It's very clear. If you have anybody similar to Becky Hill, a bailiff, saying these types of comments to even just one juror, the defense gets a new trial. So I'm thinking all the clerks of court here in South Carolina should very, very strongly advise their staff just to keep it to what's for lunch conversations, period.
Yeah, I mean, they wrote, Hill clearly advised the jurors to find Murdaugh and the evidence he presented not credible and essentially urged them to render a guilty verdict. I mean, they called Hill's efforts to undermine the jury process as breathtaking, disgraceful, unprecedented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did, didn't they?
Have you ever heard of justices coming out with this level of this feels sweeping.
It is. No, I have not. For them to really target one individual, I'm thinking that it's probably really good that Becky Hill has all her prosecutions behind her, because if she still had pending charges, I would think that it could possibly result in a prison sentence in light of the kind of language that they're using. Of course, you can't use that in a sentencing, but just the atmosphere that would be created by the damage done that the court is assigning to her, I think is monumental. So here we are. New trial. Becky Hill is the villain here, which I think is appropriate. And everyone looks like they want a new trial, and we'll be there sooner than later.
The defense has already sent out a statement about this. They said, we respect the decision that made clear that the retrial must look very different from the first. The initial jury heard more than 12 hours of testimony about Alex's financial crimes. The court held that this evidence went far beyond what was necessary and gave rise to unfair prejudice. On retrial, that will not be permitted. Alex has said from day one that he did not kill his wife and son. We look forward to a new trial conducted consistent with the Constitution and guidance this court has provided. I mean, that, it reminds me, Charlie, like when we were going through the trial, the actual 6-week trial, I feel like we came out every day and I'd look at you and you'd look at me and we'd be like, did that just happen? That's unprecedented. There's another bombshell. Here we go again.
Yeah, it's very true, isn't it? The Murdaugh saga continues. The defense is obviously putting down their marker that they expect the state to have very, very limited financial crimes. So I think that will benefit them. And whoever prosecutes this case in the future, I'm assuming it's going to be Creighton Waters again. I'm assuming
really?
It's the Attorney General's office. I'm assuming. And we'll have another Attorney General who I would assume would be active in this case as Attorney General Wilson had been So here we go. It's going to be.
Well, do you think, this last trial that we had was 6 weeks. Now, yes, the financial crimes could still be presented, that I've got a question about, just because we understood that Jim Griffin, who was the defense attorney for Alex Murdaugh, actually introduced kind of what they say, opened the door to the financial crimes. That's not even what they're worried about this time. They're not even talking about the door opening. They're saying the door's open. The door's open and should have some say, just not as much, right? It said, as a matter of the financial crimes, we do intend to require, however, that if the trial court decides to admit evidence of Murdaugh's financial crimes on retrial, the state must complete its introduction of that evidence efficiently without the lengthy presentation of inflammatory details with low to no probative value that was permitted in the first trial. For example, Satterfield's vulnerable status.
Yes. Yeah. It'll be brief. And I'm sure Judge Newman's retired. So I guess he won't be the trial judge, but whoever the trial judge is going to be very, very strict on financial crime. So that will shorten up the trial quite a bit. But do you remember towards the end of the trial, how much technical information was introduced through that very long, really folder that the state introduced? You had the video at the kennel, things like that. But all the small details about where the car was and the speed and the phone being flipped over, remember that? I guess that was comical testimony. Right. All that stuff, I think, really hurt him in the end. So I'm really wondering if we're going to have a different kind of trial in that, yes, we'll have shortened financials, we'll have the video at the kennel, but it could possibly be extended even more on the technical side. If you really get down to it, a lot of that stuff can take days and days per information.
Well, and Charlie, I mean, their cards are on the table, right? I mean, we've got cards on the table from the state, so that it's like what you're saying is like some of the things that the defense was like, I don't know, like, hold on, like, what are you worried about? The phone was facing the wrong way when it fell out of the car, things like that, like coming up with all of this sort of technical information about how the crime occurred. I mean, that all the technicalities of that could actually make this just as long. Yeah,
I'm thinking possibly, depending. And of course,
look at me. I'm just like this. It's like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, a couple of the defense experts, they might rethink how they were presented. They might get new ones. So it may be another 6-week trial, but just very, very boring technical things. We'll just have to see how it goes. But I think that's a distinct possibility. It won't be the day-to-day drama that we had before, but more of a kind of a scientific trial once we get past the hardcore evidence. Again, typically I think a retrial benefits the state. I think in this one, the defense has the upper hand.
Can you tell me, you think the defense has the upper hand?
On the retrial. I think there were some tactical errors that they're not going to commit again, and I think the state sort of lucked up. I suppose they can read this testament. But remember, the defendant testified about the dogs when and I remember the jurors gasped at this one when the defense theory was that there were a couple of shooters by the kennels, and the defendant testified when the dog was down there. Did you hear the dog bark? He said, no, the dog was quiet. So all the jurors knew that, wait a minute now, if there had been somebody by the kennels other than Alec, the dog would be barking at this person. Right. That was a big mistake, I thought. But it was kind of a happenstance. Now, that won't happen again by the defense. Now, whether the state will try to get that in there, they probably will through reading the transcript, but it'll be very flat. It'll be different. As I said, if I'm prosecuting this, I would acknowledge that, whoa, they're probably not going to let us get away with some of these things, certainly not the financials. And they're probably going to have different experts out there. And let's see if we can find out who their experts are so we can get a beat on what they're going to say, because they know what our experts are going to say. And also, I did think they didn't spend that much time on jury selection. Remember how fast that went? Yeah. I think on this one, given the publicity that has been out there, I think they're going to spend a lot of time on figuring out what jurors are willing to serve on this jury, either in Colleton County or in one of our other 45 counties that are out there, if it indeed gets transferred. So Now, do you think, question for you, being a noted member of the media, do you think the media interest will be as strong?
Oh, I don't know. I think initially it will be, but if it drags on into technicalities, I think that the interest will wane to some degree. But I think, Charlie, I think there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be investigated on this case. I've spoken with Blanca several times. Blanca Turabate Simpson, Blanca, the housekeeper for the Murdaughs. She is very clear that there was a lot that she was not asked about, and that is very public now, about where trucks were, where people were, and if there was anybody else that could have known about this crime being committed. So I think there's a lot that the investigators need to look at very carefully. There's going to be a lot of navel gazing at SLED, I think, on this case. Yeah. Because anybody that has followed up on this case, like us, knows that there's more that was not used by the prosecution. And I think the defense is going to drill holes in those places where maybe the media or people have now come out over the last few years and talked about it. Wow. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. And Eddie Smith, wonder where he is. What's happening with Eddie?
Well, Eddie, I actually reached out to Robert Kittle last week about this. Robert Kittle runs comms for the AG's office, and asked about that because his case is still pending. Now, Curtis Eddie Smith, for everybody to know, Curtis Eddie Smith was the one who was allegedly at this roadside shooting with Alex Murdaugh right after he finds out his number's been pulled. They know everything. He's coming, his law firm's blown up, right? Everybody knows everything. And Eddie Smith's on the roadside and supposedly part of this elaborate plot for insurance to get to Buster Murdaugh, this $10 million insurance policy that he's going to give to Buster and give up the ghost, right? But that all of his misdoings, all of Eddie Smith's stuff that he sat him in jail forever and ever, that's still pending. So we haven't even, he was on the witness list. He never got called.
Still pending.
So, wow. I mean, people like that, Charlie, they need to be fully investigated, right? We've got to know what happened.
Here we are.
But, you think that this could be as long of a trial? Just to kind of sum it up here, it could be just as long of a trial. We don't think it's going to happen before the new year, right? We don't expect it happening in the fall. I don't see
how they can get it together in a few months. I don't think that would be realistic.
If that's not going to happen, so we will have a new AG. We're looking at a couple of different guys who are running right now. I've personally contacted all three. There were three that I was speaking with: David Pascoe, Goldfinch, and Stumbo. Stumbo, I don't think got back to me, but Pascoe and Goldfinch both told me that they would retry it. So we're looking at a January 2027, at least in the 2027 calendar, when they can actually get this ready to go.
Wow.
Charlie, there was a leak last week that this was coming out and that it was unanimous.
No kidding.
Yeah. We were seeing this on X. We were seeing this all over the place. Do you think it'll be investigated?
The leak?
Yeah. I mean, it was on X. Like, people were reporting it, that it was a unanimous decision and he was getting a new trial.
Wow. It strikes me sort of the same scenario as remember the leak on the overturning Roe versus Wade from the U.S. Supreme Court? That's still, I don't know where that investigation ended, but no one's been named. So this is very similar. That's disappointing to hear that might have occurred, but how you effectively find who did that is probably going to be very, very difficult.
I think so. I think that what's interesting to me is that when the leak came out, the way it was kind of substantiated in my head was that they said, yeah, it's going to get overturned. I'm like, okay, you got a 50-50 shot at being correct on that one. Yeah. But when they said unanimous and then it turned out to be a unanimous decision, I thought, oh, God, they actually knew. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's disappointing to hear.
Yeah,
But
it
for
is.
so many people who would have seen the opinion, at the court itself, the law clerks and everyone else involved, yeah, there could be a number of people.
As far as Becky Hill goes, yeah, she's lucky she got kind of sorted out before this happened, right?
I think she's still on probation, right? So she gets to finish her probation. And wow, if she reads this opinion, which I suspect she will at some point in her life, it's just not going to be a happy reading, because, as you've noted, they really, really, really do take her to task. It's not undeserved. Not to try to defend her. I do think, though, we spent a good bit of time with her. I just think that she didn't meet the moment. I think it just went to her head, and then she went down this horrible, horrible path of lying about what she did, and here we are.
I mean, could Becky write a book about the retrial?
Wow. Now, wouldn't that be something?
I don't think she can. She's probably like gagged on anything like that now, wouldn't you think?
I would think, well, I would, even if she legally could, I would hope wiser counsel would prevail in that situation. But we'll see. It was such a media firestorm there in Walterboro. It sounds like you think it will be the same again. And if we do have indeed the same sort of media entourage coming there really around the world, I guess buckle up, Walterboro, because it's coming to you soon.
The actions of one woman was supposed to uphold the law, who was supposed to be there to oversee this whole court proceeding, was the one that basically took it down. I know. And of all the cases to take down, and she did such a good job, I think, of getting the trial going, the logistics, having the portable bathrooms, the whole thing, and just have it end this way is really, really sad. And I could see why a lot of folks would be angered by it, understandably so. Yeah. But it sounds like, though, that the defendant, even though he gets a new trial, at the end, we'll see how this all ends, he may not benefit from it all. We'll just have to stay tuned on that, because there is evidence there that I think that anyone looking at it from a reasonable standpoint would say that it's very clear that he murdered his son and his wife. But we'll have to see how the trial goes with the actual evidence that gets produced, and the jurors will make the decision. Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the evidence was, as we watched it, it was damning. It was damning evidence. It just was. But with all of the poking at all the holes, it will still be anybody's guess what ends up happening with these convictions. Is that what I'm hearing? I agree. I wouldn't predict right now for sure he gets convicted again. I do think that he should, based upon the evidence that I'm aware of. But things can change. There could be different evidence produced in court that we hadn't seen before. But based upon the evidence that I sat, you did as well, for 6 solid weeks, it was really a really, really, really strong case. And, the court did not really address any of that, which probably was wise, because had they addressed that, I think it would leave you scratching a little bit like, well, since the evidence is so strong, even under the Rimmer analysis that you've adopted, that's one of the factors that you could consider. But they did not go through that part of the analysis, and so here we are. He gets a new trial. No, they just said Becky screwed up, and we're retrying this case. There's no way we can live with this decision. Yes. That it was a fair trial. And here we go. Okay, Charlie. Okay, Charlie. We're on year 5. We are headed into year 6 of this, it sounds like. Year 6. Who would have thought that'd be possible? But the Murdaugh saga continues. It does. It does. I hope you'll be there right next to me through the whole thing, because otherwise... Same here. It's hard for everybody to believe that we have another trial coming for Alex Murdaugh, but it's on the cards, y'all. And we will be there every step of the way. If you haven't already, now is the time. Be sure to like and subscribe to Criminally Obsessed. Turn on your notifications. I am going to have the latest information on this case and all the cases that you're obsessed with. And guess what? I'm headed to CrimeCon in Vegas at the end of this month. And a major player in the Murdaugh saga, is going to be there with me, and we can ask questions to her about all of this. Blanca Simpson, the Murdaugh housekeeper. We are hosting a panel together. You don't want to miss this. And if you still want to go, there are tickets available for the end of this month. Just go to the CrimeCon website and put in Criminally Obsessed, one word, you get 10% off. And I will see you there.